Welcome back to Cheddar, everyone. According to the Wall Street Journal, Juul is planning another large round of layoffs and even thinking about stopping sales overseas in Europe and Asia. The move could limit its footprint to markets in the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. Earlier this year, the e-cigarette maker laid off 1/3 of its workers and halted sales of its vapes in some countries. Joining us now is Brett Sifling, Director of Get Invested at Gerber Kawasaki. Brett, thanks for taking the time here on the day where we know that there is a lot of market activity that you could be paying close attention to. But let's get into Juul here. This will be the second significant round of cutbacks for Juul during the pandemic. Is this entirely due to a drop in sales over the past several months, or is there more to it? And will Juul's slide continue?
Definitely not just due to their drop in sales. I mean, they have lost market share down from about 75% in 2018 to now just 58%. And I continue to see this trend all over the world. I mean, California just banned the flavored tobacco products. You have them exiting countries all over the world, laying off 1/3 of their workforce. And so this trend is definitely here to stay, as, you know, they were caught really just kind of poisoning the kids all over the world.
And so, okay, as we think about this, because this has been labeled one of the companies that was part of the broader teen vaping epidemic. That vaping epidemic also, because of some of the pre-existing conditions that it caused coming into COVID-19, that made some of their users at risk and defined as at risk. And so as we think about that in the midst of a pandemic, how does this kind of limit some of the prospects for Juul even post-pandemic?
Yeah, well, I mean, Juul was, more interested in deceptive marketing practices rather than actually finding solutions for smokers, in our opinion. And so, during a global pandemic, there was just a study that came out that if you're using e-cigarettes in general, or even cigarettes in conjunction with them, you're about 5 to 7 times more likely to be contracting this COVID disease. So there's a clear link between this now. It is a smaller study that has been done, I think 4,000 or 5,000 people, but I think that it logically does make sense if you're damaging the lungs that this is probably not a great idea during this era.
What does this mean for some of the companies that have taken a stake in Juul thus far?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Altria really just made a $12 billion strategic mistake. They were trying to diversify out of combustible cigarettes and more into electronic cigarettes and cannabis. Unfortunately, again, Juul is just not playing out. Cannabis, we do think, is the future, and there's a lot of room for growth there.
And so do you think that we will see kind of a rotation out of some of the plays that we had already watched flood into the e-cig market and now go into and perhaps look at more so the cannabis play, as you had mentioned?
Absolutely. I think that is the play. And, all of the old world names like Altria have really been punished over the last couple of years as the new kind of digital names and growth names have been carrying the market over the, recent years.
I guess then on the cannabis side, what are you going to be looking for specifically? Because this is still an industry that does not have federal legal status. And so there still need to be several key conversations that take place there.
Absolutely. It's legal here in California where we're located. But I do think that the next real driving catalyst is this federal legalization. Whether that happens under this administration or the next, I do believe that it will happen. It's, just a matter of when.
Is it also a matter of which corporations can lobby the best? Because at the end of the day, Altria, Philip Morris International, these are companies that have shown if their products are going to be at risk or in jeopardy of selling and revenue is hindered because of some public policy or federal regulation, that they are willing to spend money to get in front of lawmakers in D.C. And what do you expect that their arguments will be at this time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the classic case of all big companies, right, trying to push politics around. And, Juul's already tried to do this with governments around the world, and they've been embarrassed by their international expansion, frankly. I mean, they've gone into markets like China where they didn't even ask permission from local authorities and governments and were immediately kicked out within days of basically putting on their online stores. So, they can't just bully politics and the rest of the nation into selling these products when they really just are poisoning these kids.
There's a Stanford medical study saying that vaping is linked to a substantially increased risk of COVID-19 among teenagers and young adults. We discussed that briefly, but then additionally, I think about this particular group of people who are at home more, not perhaps going to the physical classrooms at the same rate that we were pre-pandemic and in the early spring semester or even fall semester, year over year comps there. And so as you have more people at home, does that facilitate more towards some of the sales of these products, or does that actually detract away from them from what we've seen thus far?
There's, an argument on both sides to this conversation. If, kids aren't also getting these products from their friends or, people that they see around school, that's an argument. But, a lot of these kids are stuck at home, and a school is a place for them to get away from whatever home life that they do have. So, I'm not sure on that one. I think that with kids just staying at home and smoking, it's obviously not a great thing. But there's really an argument on both sides.
Has there been any development around some of the research that needed to be done around vitamin E acetate and specifically how that was used in some vaping products?
Yeah, that conversation has really kind of taken a back seat. We really haven't seen much on the vaping illness, or there's basically an increase again in just regular cigarettes and their usage, especially among the older crowd. But I think that there's still a lot of unknowns to this vaping illness, and that's what makes it really so scary, and why we need regulators to step in and tell these companies that they can't be selling these products and directly marketing to the younger generation. It's just not fair.
All right, Brett Sifling, who is the director of Get Invested at Gerber Kawasaki. Brett, thanks so much for joining us here on The Day.